Hi everybody, hello, happy Tuesday. So today I'm going to talk about identifying the gaps when it comes to your goals and how to get to them. So you just the best way to think about it is like when you're trying to go somewhere and you're entering in Google Maps, but the first thing that you do before you even get there is you're like, what's the first thing that you plug in? Where you're starting, then you put in where you're going to want to go. So just like where you need to know where you're starting from to get to your destination, the same thing comes when you're setting your goals. And then the next thing that you do is you kind of choose and you enter, well, what are your resources? How are you choosing to get there? Are you going to be walking? Are you going to be riding a bike? Or are you going to be driving the car? And oftentimes we'll choose our mode or our method to get to our destination for the journey that we're taking is based on either the resources that we have, or a big factor is too, is the time that we want it to take to get there. And more often than not, I mean, who doesn't want to get to your destination as quickly as possible? So kind of think of those same things when you are setting your goals for the year, for your kind of, you're mapping out what are the health goals or fitness goals that you want to achieve in the coming year. So just like if you're going to ask Google how to get to your destination, you also want to think of that you're going to be doing those same things, that you need to first figure out where is your starting place to then get to your destination. And also you kind of also want you seek some help or some guidance for that map, that plan for that, is so you can avoid hiccups along the way, so you can avoid the traffic, so you can avoid the hazards. Just like that is you don't want to get knocked off course. Think of the same thing as when we're mapping out, or when you're mapping out your health goals for the year, is what can you do to have a plan, to have a map that can keep you on course, not get derailed, so you can get there as quickly as possible, efficiently as possible, and have the most enjoyable journey that you possibly can. So my name is Dr. Yvonne Castillo, and I'm a pain-free movement specialist and also a doctor of physical therapy if we haven't met before. And I specialize in helping women like you help them take back their active, unstoppable, and pain-free lives without any sort of pains, pills, or procedures. So today we're going to dive into a little bit about how to identify those gaps on the course of getting you to where you're going to achieve your goals, your health and fitness goals. And this always kind of reminds me of, I had I can see her name was Sharon, but she was a client of mine, and I would always say, you know what, my dream would be that, come January 1, that you would go see a movement specialist or a physical therapist, and you'd be kind of like, all right, like, this is what I'm bringing to the table, and this is where I want to be. And to think of more bigger picture. Oftentimes sometimes when people are going, they're not seen in their entirety, and not just as like their physical being, but also just kind of all the external factors that go in to what they kind of have to deal with on a day-to-day basis or weekly, and how those things may influence their ability to get to their goals. So say, like, for example, maybe your goal would be like, okay, I want to be able to cycle 30 miles a week, be able to go, uphill, go off-road. That's your goal. But we need to know, okay, well, where are you at right now? I mean, have you ever ridden a bike? Are you at, 5K? I mean, how do you feel when you're riding a bike? But then also take into account the other things that you're having to do from your day-to-day that may influence your ability to get on that bike and to be able to handle that amount of mileage per week. And that is the mistake that a lot of people make, is that they have a goal, they want to do something, and they just kind of just go for it, and they don't necessarily take into account, how, their day-to-day, say, like, they've got a sedentary job, they're working and they're sitting at their computer all day, or maybe they have to do a lot of the household chores, they're gardening, maybe they have other activities that they enjoy, like, dancing, or they walk, or they hike. But all those things will factor in, and it will influence your body to respond in a certain way. And if you're not doing those things to balance those things, that's oftentimes where we run into pain, injury. And the the trickiest thing is you don't necessarily know right away that all those little factors will kind of compound to something bigger, because you get away with it. And we're going to dive into deeper into what I call like the unraveling thread in a later talk. So in order to kind of, put yourself in the best place to achieve your goals, you need to know where you're at. And that's why I think it's so helpful to always start and just kind of be like, to get an assessment, to see kind of like, okay, well, what am I bringing to the table? In regards to your lifestyle, your sleep, how are you doing with sleeping, your diet, your nutrition, how are you moving, and then also external factors like, do you have to commute to work? Do you have to travel a lot? Are you sitting at the desk? Or maybe perhaps you're a nurse, or you're in an occupation where you're on your feet all day and you're constantly bending over. Or if you're a mom and you're constantly picking up the kids, you're carrying them on one side, you're putting them in and out of the back seat. Like, all those things compound over time, and oftentimes we're not doing the necessary things to allow our body to come back to its happy baseline, or to come back and to be balanced and to recover. And so that's why we start to kind of pick up these little kind of niggly injuries, these little aches and pains over time that kind of get better, and then they always come back, and then they kind of go away, but they're always, like, people say, well, it's just always there. It's just always there. And oftentimes we don't realize that it's often a combination of all these little things that we're either doing or not doing that kind of make us why we're at where we're at, either physically in our bodies, and how that influences us and our ability to be as healthy, as active, as mobile as we want to be, and then to reach those goals. Like I said, if you wanted to ride that 30 miles a week, or if you wanted to hike, that it kind of keeps you from getting there. Or if you go and you try to reach that higher level, why you actually get injured, it's because your body's just not prepared to do it yet. So when you're thinking about, okay, well, what do we do? First, you start with that assessment. Be like, okay, well, what are the things that I need to do so I can kind of, as I like to say, you want to assess it, you want to map it, you want to track it, and then you want to celebrate it. So the assess it will be, assessing where you're at, what you're bringing to the table, and then finding and defining what that program needs to be for you, so that you are balanced in your body. Because we've all got, different body types and stuff like that. And we bring different things to the table, and where you're currently at too. If you are on the tighter side, if there's any sort of imbalances in weakness, if you've had prior existing injury, all those things kind of feed into where you're at right now. And the single best thing to do is, again, to address those little compensations, imbalances in the body, so that you can continue to operate in that kind of optimal peak performance. And then you want to, after you've kind of mapped out that program and plan and correct those kind of imbalances and compensations, that's what the program should focus on, but then also work on and specifically focus on allowing you to recover from what you do day to day. And again, oftentimes people just think, oh, well, what do I need to do to recover? Or they think of recover as only like it being like active, like, oh, I walked 5 miles, or I hiked, or I ran. Okay, what do I do for recovery? But also I want to think of like, you also need to do the things to balance yourself out and recover from sometimes not being active. So I know we're not traveling right now, or many people aren't, but when people are commuting, day in, day out for hours and hours on end, that's taxing on your body, and it will lead to certain patterns of tightness and stiffness. And the tricky part is, especially when you're crunched on time and you're commuting and that's taking hours, the last thing you want to do is oftentimes do the necessary work before you can like pop up and go run on the bike, or go for a run, or jump on the bicycle. And that's a mistake that I see constantly a lot of people make, is they don't have a whole quote unquote lot of time, and so they're just kind of running from work or from commute, and they just kind of like, oh, it's like classically how people injure themselves. Like, I just popped up and I just like ran, or and I didn't warm up, or I didn't do anything, or like they want to go play like badminton or racquetball, and it was just like, oh, I was tight, and I just and you could see the kind of unraveling thread, as I like to say, and then like they just like went for it, and there wasn't any sort of like warm up or balancing, and they were kind of just tight. They go to try to do an activity like that, and then something tears. So I also want you to think of recovery. What are you doing to recover from things that are maybe not so activity driven, like having to sit all day at your computer, or traveling or being on a plane and stuff. Like if you're not taking the necessary actions to kind of, I say, undo those stressors on your body, it's going to compound, and it is sometimes, it's more often than not, the limiting factor to your ability to be as successful and feel as great as you want in your body, but then also when you're active. So we'll go into that more and more, but some things just to start to think about. And then the next thing that you always want to do to make sure that you're achieving your goals is you want to track it. It's so important to just track your progress and where you're at. And I also think it's too just helps you be honest with yourself, what you're doing and what you're not doing, but then also start to see some patterns. So tracking what I have my clients do, they have a nice little monthly calendar where they're kind of, marking in, okay, when am I getting my stretching in, my strengthening work in, my mobility work, and then the kind of the soft tissue work that I do. That's kind of my big three that you guys saw on the blueprint. So, are they, meeting things? What are they doing for cardio, but also tracking too, like where are they finding that they're still in pain or they're limited? So you can kind of see it and you can see patterns, but then also too, just being honest of, are you doing the work? Because if you have an expectation that you're going to reach a goal by a certain time, but you're not doing the work consistently, I mean, that's just, you're going to see the gap. And I think oftentimes too, when you're tracking it and you're seeing your patterns more consistently, it's motivating to just to stick with it. But then also you can course correct sooner versus, like I said yesterday, we're talking about just like the set it and forget it goals where people are like, oh, I'm just going to be healthier. I'm just going to, but they're not really saying, okay, what are the little micro steps that I'm doing on a daily basis to get myself there. So you want to track it. So again, you're honest with yourself, you're seeing your progress, so you can, again, adapt and course correct if you're ready to be progressed a little bit sooner, or if you're noticing that, life happens and you have to kind of adjust. And through that you can start to track your progress, but then it's also very motivating too, because you'll see your progress. So even when you're not seeing like the big gains, you'll see like, oh, just because I was consistent doing those things, that resulted in, a big bump in, a week or a month. So just when you're kind of not seeing the gains kind of go so consistently up, it helps you stay true and stay on track instead of just falling off when sometimes you're just like right on the cusp of another big kind of bump up in progress. So that's something else. And then to celebrate it. So it's really important as you're creating these micro kind of milestones when you're setting goals. You don't just want to be like, oh, I'm going to go, run a 5K, and you're not, you need to know where you're going to start to just slowly go up, where it's like, okay, am I going to walk around the block, or am I going to, what am I going to do consistently? And give your setup where you have a reward system. So if you're being consistent, like, okay, every single day I walked around the block, you're giving yourself, you're doing something fun, or you're creating a reward system. It's whether it's like, oh, I enjoyed a cup of coffee, or you had some quiet time or something, whatever it is for you, where there's like a little reward system. Or say it's like, okay, if I'm consistent and I do, this many walks every single day, you go treat yourself for, a self spa day or facial, or just something, you buy yourself a book or something. But it helps behaviorally solidify where you keep up doing these habits. And so that's a big part too. So when you're picking your goals, pick goals that excite you. And I touched on this again yesterday, and be accountable. Being accountable, declaring your goals, and being visible in them is another surefire way that you will achieve them. Because once you declare it, you speak it into being. But then also when you share that, with somebody else, and I've even heard of the extremes where people, if you really want to be held accountable to it, that you can, say, write a check for somebody for an X amount of dollars and be like, hey, if I don't achieve this by this time, you can cash this check. Like, that'll be a surefire way for you to want to stay consistent, whatever that is, whatever that accountability is. And again, that's why we have accountability partners and pods set up in for here, so that you can find, a group of ladies or a partner that you can check in with, whether that's your Messenger or Voxer, whatever you want to do, or through this group where you're tagging each other, making sure that they show you, you attend the trainings, that you get your questions answered, and that you're just staying on track and that you have a plan. It's very, very powerful. So I hope that you do that. And then when you're thinking about the goals too, and it's kind of law of behavior and through there, but choosing and making your goals obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. So when you're saying obvious, okay, well, how can my goals be obvious? And when you're breaking them down, it's almost like, and I have my clients do this too, where it's like where you're creating an environment, which is really important, that you're going to do what you're saying you're going to do. And sometimes that can be as easy as laying out your exercise clothes the day before. Your shoes are already by the door. You already have, you know, exercise bands or whatever it is, or alarms on your phone where it holds you to the fire, where you literally almost have to like trip over it. And you'll see in some of that movement things, but I have an exercise band and those do hip stabilizing exercises, but I keep it like looped on the coat rack, and it's like I grab that sucker, go back and down on the hallways. And so how I can build and kind of bake in my exercises throughout my day, that's another thing we'll talk about, that you do not have to do all your exercises at one time. You can kind of sprinkle them throughout the day and you still get the same benefits. So that's your number one, where just make your goals obvious and doable is very helpful. And the second thing is make them attractive. So that's kind of where I talked about just make them something that you want to achieve. Don't make it something that's miserable. And even if it's something, you know, some of those things that you may not be quite have the fun in it yet, make it fun. I mean, somehow make attaining your goals fun, whether that's having an exercise partner, using music, you know, buying yourself fun exercise clothes, like make it so it's an enjoyable activity. Same thing that's, you know, if you do better in groups, I know it can be hard right now to do kind of group training, but if you have a, you know, a workout partner, or even if it's like, okay, we're both jumping on this Zoom exercise together, that can make it fun, you know, and have a virtual coffee date or something. But there's ways to get creative, but to make it fun and to make the goal attractive for you. And then also too, I think when we were talking about yesterday, of visualizing your goals, of visualizing what is it going to be, and really feel like, what is that going to feel like when you've achieved your goal, and really put yourself in that place of how am I going to feel once I'm, you know, riding, you know, 30 miles a week. Is that, is that, riding with friends, you can make it to the top of, and see the beautiful lookouts, like whatever that is for you, like really put yourself in how is that going to feel. So then that is just a more attractive goal for you. And then make them easy. So again, if you want to run the half marathon, or you want to, again, cycle 30 miles, you don't just go, okay, well then tomorrow you just go for it. You want to break down that big goal into little milestones. And like I said too, where it's, first that you just start out with, walking maybe, and then it's a jog walk or whatever that is, where you break it up and you can track, how that's improving. But if you just kind of go up and go down, or you just go straight out of the gate, you'll probably end up hurting yourself. But it's just hard to stay consistent. And then if you don't have those little milestones and you're not successfully kind of achieving them and you're on track, again, that can kind of also be a place where people kind of fall off from achieving their bigger goals, because they don't have a sense of satisfaction of, yes, I accomplished something. And also, or you feel yourself that I can be successful. The more you can prove to yourself that you can be successful in achieving those milestones, 100% more likely you are going to get to that goal, because it will get tough along the way. Not, achieving your goals isn't all, roses and sprinkles and unicorns. It's like, and it's not oftentimes quick. Most often than not, things that we really want and the harder things that we go for, it takes time. It takes time, and it takes that consistency, which sometimes isn't, the most sexiest thing to kind of, sell, but it's the truth of it. It boils down to it. It's going to take that patience and that perseverance. So that's where building those milestones in, making them easy and achievable and digestible. It doesn't have to be super complicated, and just starting from there and building on that is very, very helpful to ultimately getting to your goals. And the last thing is to make them satisfying. So it's something that, that obviously it feels good. And again, that's kind of tied in. It's satisfying when you achieve those milestones, because again, it also kind of validates, it speaks to your identity, that you're the type of person that, does these things, that you can hold on to your vision, that you can achieve those things. So again, those are kind of the four laws of behaviors when it comes into setting goals. And then just to kind of close up, but just to think, and I said this yesterday, but there's a study, I think it was done in Stanford, I'm not too sure, I have to double check, but you are 3 more times likely to achieve your goals if you write them down daily. So you are 3 more times likely to achieve your goals if you write them down daily. And I mentioned this yesterday, where you speak them into being and you write them down. So to visualize, to see that sticky every single day, I think that would be a great challenge for you if you were to write your goals on a sticky and see it every day. Even say it while you're writing it, but if you're to write out your goals every single day, you're 3 more times likely to achieve them. So I hope that was helpful for you. Again, just to kind of see and assess and take a step back to kind of see, okay, where I'm at and then where you want to go, and what are the steps that you can do to set yourself up to successfully achieve the goals or the results that you want to see in 2021. And if you need any help with that, you know, if you have any thoughts and if you want to share what kind of resonated with you in this talk, I would love to know. Just drop your comments below. I always go back and kind of read the comments. If you have any questions or comments, I will go back and I will answer them. And yeah, so have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.